Good day, dear viewers. 2022 is coming to an end. This year has been incredibly rich in various events, including in the world of MMA. Today, we want to sum up the results of the outgoing year and touch on the topic of all the championship fights of this year. Champions are often the strongest fighters in the division, but sooner or later there will be someone who can dethrone even the most dominant fighter. We invite you to take a look at how much the leaderboard of each division has changed. We will go through in order from the very first numbered tournament of this year to the very last. Let's go! At the UFC 270 tournament in the main event, Francis Ngannou met with old teammate Cyril Gane, but we are interested in the fight that preceded this. In the Flyweight division, the third bout took place between the Brazilian God of War and the Killer Kid. Brandon Moreno defended his belt after defeating the same Figueiredo last year. This fight exceeded the expectations of many, but after the previous one-sided beating by the Mexican, we saw a very equal duel. The battle went on a collision course. Moreno acted clearly at a distance, interrupting his opponent using the famous Mexican boxing school. The Brazilian missed a lot, but in return he charged heavy blows, which sent the opponent down as many as 3 times per fight. And he transferred his opponent to the canvas, keeping him on the ground. At the end of 5 rounds, the signature "End New" sounded, and the belt returned to the previous champion. Already at the beginning of the next year, the first fourth fight in UFC history between the two fighters should take place. Whether Davison will be able to keep the title or lose again, we'll find out soon. We are jumping 3 numbered tournaments ahead at once. The UFC 273 tournament was remembered not only by the epic battle between Burns and Chimaev, as well as the destruction of the Korean Zombie, but also by the change of champion, if not on paper, then in the minds of many people. In March 2021, the first fight took place between Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. That fight ended with the Russian fighter throwing a knee at the opponent standing on the 3rd point of support, which is a very serious violation. Then the whole world of MMA criticized the Jamaican for too unbearable acting and appropriating an undeserved belt. After that, he was out of the second fight due to surgery, and former champion and very dangerous striker Corey Sandhagen fought for the interim belt. The winner then was Yan, who was already preparing for a vendetta. Probably more than 90% of the fans were confident in the dominant victory of the interim champion. Even the bookmakers gave the current champion a factor of 6, which is simply an incredible number for the champion. But what did we see in a real duel? Sterling worked on the mistakes and was able to take 2 rounds and 3 one-sidedly, scoring the opponent from the back mount. Later, the interim champion exploded and took the championship rounds in his favor, but it was one round that decided everything. In the opinion of 2 judges, it was Sterling who took him, who remained the champion and defended the title. Although this is not an official change of champion, but according to many fans, the Russian was the champion who lost the title due to a misunderstanding. At the next numbered tournament, a rematch took place between Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza. 6 years have passed since the first meeting, and many were inclined to win the current champion. Esparza is already an age-old fighter for the minimum weight, and the performance of both girls showed good progress. But what do we see in reality? A fight that has become even more legendary than the meeting between Ngannou and Lewis. 5 rounds of the most boring movements around the octagon brought the viewers to such a state that it didn't matter to the verdict of the judges. Esparza became the champion for the second time by a separate decision of the judges. The UFC 275 tournament in Singapore. At this event, a duel took place between light heavyweight champion Glover Teixeira and Yeezy Prohaska. The Brazilians were making their first defense since an early victory over the previous champion Blachowicz. The MMA community favored the Czech athlete more, who is much younger and fresher than his opponent. But in the end, we saw an uncompromising duel between the 2 warriors in which the initiative passed from one to the other. The veteran of the weight category showed that he is still in combat-ready form and can compete with the new generation. His jaw still holds powerful punches and boxing is still effective. Prochaska, on the other hand, showed that he did not profess the same way of the samurai. He showed his fighting spirit and responded to every attack of his opponent every time. By the time of the 5th round, the Brazilian was leading the rounds with a score of 3-1. This could not cheer up the Czech, and after a standing knockdown at the beginning of the round, he was able to recover and strangle his opponent 30 seconds before the end of the segment. This fight was named the best fighter according to the World MMA Awards. Prochaska showed his character and rightfully became the undisputed champion. Next in line is the UFC 277. In the main event, there was a rematch between Lioness Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena, who in the last fight created an upset that took the belt for herself. The main question was, is this victory accidental, or is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, female fighters in the world on the decline? But the duel put everything in its place. We believe that it makes no sense to analyze this fight because there is really nothing to analyze. Total domination and beating. The scores are 50-45, 50-44, and 50-43 on the judges' cards, which is an incredible case for a title fight. Record for knockdowns in the history of title fights. Thus, the Brazilian Lioness was able to regain her second belt and prove that she is still the best female fighter in the world. UFC 278 was able to really shock many viewers and leave a good impression with the spectacular co-main event, where Costa and Rockhold made a great fight. At the end of the tournament was a rematch between the first number in the ranking of the best fighters, regardless of the category, Kamaru Usman against the top fighter Leon Edwards. The second duel between the fighters took place almost 7 years after the first meeting in the octagon. Since then, both have greatly improved their skills and are rightfully considered top fighters. Before the fight for Leon Edwards, bookmakers gave odds over 4. In the fight itself, most of the time, the expectations of the audience were fully justified. In the first round, the Englishman became the first in the organization to transfer the welterweight champion to canvas. But for the time being, this takedown was considered Leon's main action for the entire fight. From the second to the fourth rounds, the champion interrupted his opponent, who most of the time overlapped and did not aggravate the situation much. But everything changed in an instant in the fifth round. The challenger realized that he had literally a minute left to fulfill his dream, and used a combination consisting of a deceptive jab and a left high kick on an evasive opponent. The champion fell to the floor with no signs of resistance and did not even need to finish off. Thus, just a few minutes before the end of the fight, losing the whole fight, Leon was able to take the belt and achieve the main goal. It's time to talk about the UFC 280 tournament held in Abu Dhabi. At this tournament, the vacant lightweight title was played in the main event. In 2022, lightweight events have seen the most events related to the championship belt. UFC 274 hosted a championship fight between Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. Unfortunately, for the first time in the history of the organization, the Brazilian became the first champion who did not make weight and then lost it. He completed the meeting in the first round and became the first contender for the title. The Russian fighter and the main sparring partner of Khabib Nurmagomedov, Islam Makhachev, was going to oppose him. Many fans believed that the Dagestani fighter did not deserve his chance due to the level of opposition, but still understood his danger. The main questions in this fight were, is Makhachev as good as everyone thinks? And can Oliveira establish himself as the strongest lightweight in history? This meeting was called the most intriguing for 2022 due to the confrontation between the top jitser and the world champion in combat Sambo. But unfortunately, this meeting cannot be called competitive. In the first round, the Dagestani fighter controlled the opponent for most of the segment, and Charles, in turn, tried to throw a triangle, but all attempts were stopped. In the second round, Islam Makhachev knocked down his opponent after a reckless flying knee from the Brazilian. In such a situation, Islam was not afraid to get into the ground to the black belt in BJJ and strangled him with the hand triangle until he voluntarily surrendered. Makhachev returned the belt to Russia, and most importantly, he accomplished his father's plan. At the 281 tournament, the third fight between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira took place, but already under the rules of MMA. In kickboxing, the Brazilian defeated the New Zealander twice, first by a controversial judicial decision, and the second time he completely knocked him out. Everyone wondered how the fight would go according to completely different rules. Adesanya, who has already had some faded fights for several defenses in a row, this time met with the main boogeyman in his career. This time it was a puncher, whose standing skills were perhaps better than those of the champion, and in terms of anthropometry were in no way inferior to him. the champion decided to resort to a tactic that he had never used intentionally before: wrestling. Adesanya took the first round due to the struggle and a standing knockdown at the end of the segment. The second round was taken by the Brazilian, who interrupted the opponent in the standing position. The third and fourth rounds followed the same scenario as the first one, but in the fifth round, Pereira was able to win by technical knockout a minute before the end of the fight. The situation is very similar to Usman vs. Edwards too. Israel Adesanya was never able to defeat his main enemy in his career, and the middle division received a new technical Brazilian puncher as the champion of the weight category. The last numbered tournament of the outgoing year. We don't know if this can be called a change of champion, but the fact is that in the eyes of many in the light heavyweight division, there is a new people's champion in the person of Makhachev. After an injury, Prochazka will vacate the title, which was supposed to be played between Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz. We do not see much point in covering this fight, since our channel already has a video with an analysis of this meeting, which was released quite recently. But the fact remains. Now, the throne is empty, but in the hearts of people, there is one who deserves it. This video has come to an end. This fighting period shows that nothing lasts forever. Even super dominant champions with 5 title defenses will fall sooner or later, and new faces will come in their place. The next year also promises to be eventful. A rematch between Usman and Edwards, a fight between Makhachev and featherweight champion Volkanovski, and the return of Jon Jones. What event are you looking forward to the most? Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with your friends. Bye!